Welcome to the Cap Planner podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of private capital markets. Whether you're new to private market investing or a seasoned professional, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping the industry. Featuring expert guests and deep discussions, Cap Planner is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hello, and welcome to the Cap Planner podcast. Today, we are joined by Laura Shawver. And hi, Jody.
Morgan. Hi, Laura. So excited. I feel like I guilted you into being on this podcast because we go back so many decades and so many iterations between kids and nieces and business and companies that as hard as you tried, I wasn't budging on this.
Yeah, hi, Jody. Hi, Morgan. Yeah, we do go back decades, and reminds me of this one saying, especially for you, Morgan. Jody, you'll appreciate this about powerful women. May we know them, may we be one, may we raise one. So there you go. There you go,
It's very
Morgan. Raised by a powerful woman.
That would be an understatement. And a side note of it is that my grandmother is also a very powerful woman in her own right. So Jody
Mhm.
knows what it's like to also be raised by one.
Yes, yeah, and, our mothers and your grandmother, Morgan, be it, I guess, realistically or figuratively, burn their bras so we could get to where we are, so there you go.
Maybe, Laura, with that, you could give the audience a little bit of background. I mean, we could sing your accolades, which I know is your least favorite thing to do, but maybe just factually tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got here.
Okay, sure. So, Laura Shawver, and I grew up in Iowa. I grew up in Davenport, Iowa, also known as the Quad Cities. You can locate it actually on a map without having it named on a map because it's the only place where the Mississippi River runs east and west rather than north and south. So there's a little bit of tidbit about Davenport, Iowa. Went to the University of Iowa, both for my bachelor's and my PhD before I escaped. And I'm a scientist by training, and I've been fortunate to have been in our biotech industry for a long, long time, since 1989, actually. I feel really
Good for
lucky.
you.
I feel like I got to grow up with the industry. And of course, I don't think it's peaked yet because we're making inroads into diseases and serious diseases and making transformational changes to patients at a clip that is like no other, at least in my career. So I've been really pleased to be a part of it over, I guess, 30 years plus now. So
I know, right? I read it. I was reading one of your bios and it sounded like mine. And I was like, Jesus, we are, more than 30 years or whatever it is. Yeah, we're the OGs of the house at this point. That's fine.
It works. Laura, what brought you from Iowa to the Bay Area? How did you get there?
Morgan, that was entirely serendipitous. I was trained as a pharmacologist, a classically trained pharmacologist. It was the early 80s when I got my PhD, and at that time, it was the cool thing to clone something. And I wanted to do that, and I was going to take a postdoc in the first lab that let me clone something, and I didn't care what it was. And I ended up at the University of Virginia Cancer Center in the field of oncogenes, growth factors, and signal transduction pathways. And that took me from the University of Virginia to Washington University in St. Louis for a second postdoc. And then I was looking for a job, and at that time, you look for jobs by looking in the back of Science and Cell. There was no internet, and there were job postings, and there was a job posting for somebody with experience in oncogenes, growth factors, and signal transduction pathways. And I thought, oh, that's me. I'm going to send them my package. It was at a company called Triton Biosciences in Alameda, California. I didn't know what Triton was. I didn't know where Alameda was. I had to look it up on a map. but it sounded like me. And I sent, at that time you have your CV and your publications, you put them in snail mail, you send them off with the cover letter, and you hope that somebody reads them. And that's what happened. And I got a phone call in the lab one day, uh, you know, basically giving me a phone interview. And then a short time later, somebody from HR called and said, would I come out and formally interview? And was not thinking about biotech, didn't know what it was very, very close to taking an assistant professor job at the University of Kansas, which could have fit this Midwest girl just fine.
Could have for sure.
Yeah, I could have for sure. That would have been a whole different life for me, but was lucky enough to when I interviewed at Triton Biosciences, I have to say I was struck by, 2 things. I was struck by how young everyone was. I was young back then too, and I was struck by the number of women scientists. This
Right.
is in 1989, in academia, there were not that many women scientists, but at this particular company, there were, and that made me wanna join that company, and I never looked back.
From there, though, because well, I'll preface this that you and I met because you were at Cleve Biosciences and 5 AM Ventures, Andy Schwab, sent me to go talk to you because he thought you might need some help. And I remember meeting you, and I think you were a little suspect, like you didn't know whether I was friend or foe because I'd been sent by the VCs. So you weren't quite sure what my deal was, right?
Yeah, and I also wasn't sure back then that I needed help, and oh my god, I needed so much help.
I
So,
remember that you
yeah.
needed help too, just as an aside. So
Yes.
that's why at least we're still friends. That means we did something right, and we did become friends. And you've had many successes, and you've also had many companies, private companies, where you've had hard discussions with the board. So maybe just give us a little bit of perspective on that for someone who's maybe listening who is an entrepreneur and knows that you've had some very robust liquidity events, but you didn't get there just, on an easy path.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy path for sure. I sometimes I say, "Oh, if you've had enough bad luck, some good luck will come your way." So, I've certainly lately had my share of good luck, but it wasn't always that way. Um,
Yeah.
that being said, I was mentored very early in my career by some amazing people. I spent 10 years at Sugen. That was a company that was private, public, acquired, merged. We put 5 drugs into the clinic and 2 popped out the other side as marketed products. So I feel like I had a good base of knowledge about the biotech industry. But when I went to become CEO at my very first company, which was in 2002, here in San Diego at Phenomics, I just had no idea what I was in for, and it was very, very different. At this startup company, it was a forward genetics company. We were trying to parachute into the causative drivers of disease and then develop drugs against them. Also, something that at that time was quite difficult. Now it's different and relatively easy. But wow, we encountered and through that company and my next company, all the different problems that you encounter in early stage biotech.
How did you go I mean, so obviously, you're a scientist by training, which I think is something where it's a box that so many biotech CEOs check along the way, but it doesn't sound like when you went from undergraduate to postdoctorate that you were especially in cloning, which as an aside, I did look at how much money it would cost to clone my dog, and it's not cheap, but maybe we can talk about that offline. But what line was it clear to you that not only were you going to be in biotech to say, but that you were going to be a leader of a biotech company, nonetheless a CEO?
Oh, okay, Morgan, great question. First of all, if you found the right high school student, they could clone your dog for free, just FYI.
Oh,
So
perfect. Okay, good.
yeah. Um, Yeah, so, becoming a CEO is not something that I had given thought to ever in my career. It also happened very serendipitously. Again, I think because I had experiences early in my biotech career that gave me the skill sets that gave me a chance at being CEO, and I've kind of fell into it. I mean, in biotech, I started as a bench scientist in a molecular biology department. Yes, cloning things and making chimeric antibodies and all the things that were popular back then. And my guy started in biotech just when PCR came out, so that will date me. But I love the lab. I love doing science. I never thought I would do anything else. It's just that in our industry, you get the opportunity to raise your hand and say, "Oh, yes, I can do this. I can help with that." And that led me to do project management. It led me to lead manufacturing. I mean, I never thought that I would have experience in manufacturing a drug, but I had that experience. It gave me experience in toxicology, the things that you need to do to get into the clinic. I had experience with my colleagues in running clinical trials, not just early clinical trials, all the way through phase 3. So that gave me a foundation that then when the opportunity came, John Diekman, Andy Schwab's partner, said, "Hey, Laura, will you move to San Diego and be the CEO of this startup company?" I said yes.
It makes me smile because, first of all, I call bullshit on serendipity. I don't think that's exactly it. I think that you made your opportunities and people saw you in a way because you're so calm and you have this really resilient disposition. And I think people felt like, and your Midwestern values and all of it, I think they felt like you were a perfect candidate. And then they were like, "Do you want to raise your hand?" And you said, "Sure, I'll raise my hand." So I think it was a little more active on your part than you lead to believe because you're very humble. So
Well, thank you,
so
Jody.
after the first go round, and then you've had how many companies to date where you have been the CEO?
Yeah, five now, and
Good for you.
at each of these companies have been very, very different. They do have one common theme, however, which is I get to work with great people, be it people at the company, be it investors, be it partners. I would say that's one consistent theme. And it's really been a privilege to lead these companies and get to work with amazing, amazing individuals.
That's really my next question is having been CEO 5 times, we look at compensation for executives who have been first time, second time, third time, and or more. And then from there, we even look at it by industry. And there are differences where life science CEOs have more of a premium the more experience they have versus tech CEOs have more of a premium having no experience, having it be their first time. And my real question for you is seeing so many different generations of workers and being a leader and I'm sure a mentor to so many people coming into it, where have you seen the biggest changes over the last couple of years and how has your leadership style evolved with each company and each position?
I'm glad that you asked that question, Morgan, because I do feel my leadership has evolved. I feel like first time CEOs, and I did this too. We feel like we have to know everything, be experts at everything. Like I say, we have to play all the instruments in the orchestra as well as be the conductor. And, you just can't do that. And what I learned is that we have to let, people play the instruments and we have to be the conductor. Of course, it certainly helps to have played a few instruments and it helps to know how to fix those instruments when they break. But I was more hesitant early on to surround myself with people that were amazing experts, wanted my job. Now, like, I only hire people that want my job and actually say, "Please take my job." So it's very different than when I first started back in 2002.
Yeah, you talked about this when we spoke the other day that looking to be a different operator. You're a different operator now, and you and I reflected on this because apropos having Morgan on the call, right, and being my daughter, is that my business, the Thielander business, really required me being a different operator and having to learn just as much as Morgan is learning, but for me to learn from her. And it sounds like that's also something that you've focused on.
Absolutely. It is incredible how much we learn from the younger generation, how they are way, more creative, way the amazing problem solvers. You know, they have this perspective that I can do anything, and I look back on it, I think I probably had that perspective too when I was young, but I failed enough times now where maybe I'm a little bit scared, like, "Really? Can you really do that?" And, they just don't think twice, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it." And, so it's really remarkable to that I continue to get to work with, young people that are just, blazing amazing trails as biotech continues to grow and thrive.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about your eye-popping 2.1 billion price tag that AbbVie was willing to pay for this cell therapy biotech that you were the CEO of. So we have to mention it, Laura. I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to tout your success here for 1 second, and then we can move on.
Okay, well, first of
Yeah.
all, Capstan, it was a privilege to lead Capstan, and I think, people know that cell therapy, has been transformational. What we mean by that is it cures some people with certain cancers. And then people showed that it had profound effect in B-cell mediated autoimmune disorders, but um, it's very costly, it's not accessible, it's complicated, and what we were seeking to do at Capstan was remove all the barriers by going in vivo. So, Jody, it's actually not cell therapy, it's in vivo cell engineering, and I think the people that know Capstan know that we took a lipid nanoparticle, very reminiscent of the COVID-19 vaccine, and put in a mRNA that it coded for a CD19 CAR, and then we decorated it with an antibody that directed it to T cells in vivo. It's it is something that is necessary, but 3.5 years ago, when the company was founded, it was this probably won't work. And but
Right.
yet, we had one of the founders, a young founder, a postdoc, who's, like, bound and determined to make it work. That's Hai Akajanian. And, the people at the company, they, were incredibly creative. And we took that from a concept into clinical trials, and it was that, concept and the promise of being able to transform the lives of people with B-cell mediated autoimmune disorders. I think that captivated a number of pharmas, including AbbVie, and I was thrilled that to put the drug in their hands and the platform in their hands because they can reach many more patients than we could have ever reached as an independent company.
Also, but though this is where it parlays into what Morgan was saying, is that you not being a first time or even a second time CEO, you knew how to do this. You knew how to play this game and, bring all the musicians together in harmony in a way that maybe a more junior conductor might not have had the wherewithal or the stamina to get through that.
Yeah, I think could I knew how to hire the right people. I know how to, spot talent and recruit talent and take a step back and let the magic happen. And, that's sometimes what it takes rather than looking over everybody's shoulder and saying, "Did you do it? Can you do it? Did it happen? When did it happen?" And, yeah, there was an amazing amount of, um, work and progress that was made in a fairly short time at Capstan, thanks to all the people that were there.
Takes a whole team, right? I mean, that's part of it is that it does take a village. I'm reading the Happiness Files book right now, and they talk about it, the difference of being early in your career and the fact that you are so fearless because you kind of have to be. It's like you have to be that, have that mindset where it can't go wrong because frankly, you can't afford for it to go wrong. And you might not have had a failure so great where you're like, I can't do this. It's just not an option. And I think that's part of really where being such a leader and an innovator and the way that you are. And I mean, you're so resilient that it's really what carried you through. And I think that's part of,
We
yeah,
went to
I
school
love that.
in St. Louis. I mean,
Totally.
Kansas,
When
right?
you said Wash U, I'm like, I'm clapping in my mind because I sit in St. Louis now. So near and dear to my heart. But for anybody who is listening, they are probably saying, okay, well, you do all these great things with work, but what do you do outside of work? How do you actually enjoy spending your time separate of running
All your
companies? And
celebrating your
yeah,
success.
Well, first of all, I do love what I do, and I am going to continue doing what I do, what I do, or at least I hope to. I certainly don't want to stop now, and we all have things that we love to do in the time that we choose to call our free time. So everybody knows that I'm a surfer, and I love doing that, and that there's a lot of peace and serenity, but that comes for me anyway, just by getting in the water, even if it's for a short time. And of course, people know that I'm a dog person. I have pets, and probably on this recording, somebody's going to hear dogs barking in the background. But yes, I feel it's important to be able to reset yourself, whatever that is, and it'll be different for everybody. But also, I don't require a lot of quote unquote downtime. I think it's because I'm so enamored with the science and the progress and company building, and so I love doing that.
Well, I think you really embody, I've had these conversations before and I feel this way that it's not a job, it's a career, it's a life work. It's a luxury to be able to earn a living doing what we do and be able to contribute. You talk always about patients and the people and this is part of the innovation ecosystem and you've been really you have been an icon here and you've made a difference. I will just relay a personal story in that you're good on so many levels and it just shows you exactly what you're talking about. It's very holistic. You like the surfing and you like we used to go to your spin classes. But I had a little boy at home who was in high school who needed an internship and I sent him to you and you were like you did what you say you do well, and that is you let my son meet with your science people or whomever it was to see whether or not they'd be interested in someone like him. And sure enough, they said to you, yeah, he seems like he's a good enough guy to come on, and he interned at Cleve Biosciences. And we went to all of your spin classes, your cycling classes that were fundraisers as a family. Morgan, I don't know if you remember, but we all did that. And then when Blake graduated from high school, I had a party for him and you came to our house and everybody was there. And we've overlapped so many ways that even as recently as 2 summers ago when I was up in North Carolina, I was speaking to a lifeguard at the pool and she seemed really smart and capable. And it turned and I said to Morgan, "Why don't we see if we could hire her as an intern?" Because she said she's having a hard time. And sure enough, she was your niece, just completely coincidence. So I have
Yeah,
followed in your
amazing.
footsteps of yeah, trying to
Yeah.
be nice to everybody. So
Yeah. Yeah, we know everything moves in circles, and I'm so appreciative of that. And yes, I do have a passion for nonprofits, and thank you for supporting mine over the years, which is the Clarity Foundation. We're now part of OCRA, but wow, so many people help that nonprofit help other women with ovarian cancer some of your listeners won't know that I'm an ovarian cancer survivor. Long time now. I have so much gratitude for that because many women diagnosed never get their life back. I was diagnosed back in 2006, had my surgery, chemotherapy, but still popped back and was able to continue to lead companies where most women go from chemo to chemo to chemo and never get their life back. And, this foundation was helping women get access to profiling to help determine their next in line treatment. And so many of my friends, so many of my colleagues, so many of people that I never even know helped me and yeah, very, very appreciative of that.
If somebody wants to find out more about the ovarian cancer charity work, where should they be looking?
Yeah, we're now part of OCRA, which is the largest ovarian cancer, well, actually gynecological cancer foundation in the world. So just go to OCRA, I think it's hope.com, and maybe you can find the link and post it for people.
We can,
Um,
absolutely.
so many resources there that are really, really needed, not just for women that are diagnosed, but their families. I mean, it's such a shock to, walk into a doctor's office and then walk out with a cancer diagnosis. I mean, I still remember it like it was yesterday. So I have so much empathy for people that have a diagnosis of any type of cancer, and their families as well.
Contribution on all fronts has been remarkable, as well as your path here. And I'm so glad that you decided to join us today. And I hope you are too. And we look forward to seeing you at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in January.
If not before.
Right.
Thank you, Laura.